by being president of this great university. And it was at that moment that I did not realize, but I would realize later, Maya, that Elijah and I became kindred spirits. And it had to do with that struggle, with the fact that he was so genuine, he was so authentic, he was so real. He didn't get caught up in all the trappings, all of the accoutrements of the position. He was a person who led with his heart. And I connected to him on that level. And then I saw another side of him that also left me in tears. It was 5 years into my presidency here at Morgan when the social unrest began here in Baltimore in April of 2015. And when I stop and reflect upon such a challenging time in our city, a city that I was still settling into and getting to know, I was so deeply moved as I would turn on the television each night and I would see Congressman Cummings in the street fighting every single night. So much so that he lost his voice, and I will forever remember the tears that were welled in his eyes as he was fighting with all of his heart and all of his soul to restore peace to our great city of Baltimore. Dr. Rockamore Cummings, now I know that Elijah loved you. He spoke about you often. And I know he loved our great nation. And I know he loved our great state of Maryland. But during that turbulent time, it was abundantly clear to me that Elijah loved himself some Charm City. He loved Baltimore. He had a very special love for the city of Baltimore. And when I got the message that he had passed, I must admit, I felt and still do that a piece of the heart of Baltimore has passed too. And I was so encouraged with the last speakers because it showed that that heart is still in us. And he is leaving behind all of these possibilities. And for that, we are grateful as a city, and we will continue to build on his great legacy. And so as I bring my remarks to a close, I would like to say that the Morgan State University family, our entire family, spread all over the world, is indeed honored this evening to host this celebration and tribute. I thank you, Dr. Rockamore Cummings, for allowing Morgan State University to serve as Elijah's first stop on his journey home. And because I think it is most appropriate that the city that he loved so dearly, and this institution that he loves equally dearly and served with great distinction, would have the first opportunity to bid our great champion farewell. And so, yes, we are presenting a resolution, and we're not going to read it because we are an academic community, and you can see that it is a dissertation. But I want to read, if you will, the last statement. It says, resolved that the Morgan State University family salute and praise Congressman Elijah E. Cummings, one of the towering and most significant figures in our 152-year history, with the slightly modified words of Mark Antony when he was speaking of Brutus in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. Quote, "This was one of the noblest Americans of them all. His life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say to the world, 'This was a man.' God rest Elijah's soul. May he live in the other world in peace and rest in power."
Thank you so much. I also just want to, while Dr. Wilson is on the stage, thank Dr. Wilson and the entire staff and faculty and student body here for hosting this event. We appreciate it deeply. We have two speakers. Hang in there. Gwendolyn Boyd, Dr. Gwendolyn Boyd. She is extraordinary. Prepare yourselves. Former Alabama State University president, a champion of STEM, the first African-American woman to earn a mechanical engineering degree from Yale, also has degrees from Alabama State and Howard, spent more than 30 years with IBM and Johns Hopkins in applied physics. She is the real deal, and she spoke at the College Bound Luncheon this past summer, if you heard her, and told quite an extraordinary story about how she needed to break through walls and barriers, and did so powerfully and gracefully.
Praise the Lord, everybody. Praise the Lord, everybody. This is the day the Lord has given us to celebrate a great man of God, a servant leader, an honorable man who was a fighter until the end. This is the day that we have come to celebrate Elijah Cummings, the one who embodies the Negro spiritual, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm going to let it shine because Jesus gave it to me. So I'm going to let it shine." And so tonight we've come to honor this great man. And when I met him in the early 80s, and we had an opportunity, everybody's got an Elijah story. We've heard them all night long. But when I had an opportunity to meet him and he learned that I was from Alabama, we shared how we had integrated spaces. The pools here in Baltimore, and I integrated my middle school and high school in Alabama. And we were inextricably bound together at the hips forever. We understood, and we all know that he was a fighter. We know that when he came to the mic, he had that preaching cadence that made you stand up and listen to every word he said. And so we know that we've lost in this community one who will always be remembered for being a freedom fighter, for one who was a speaker for social justice. And I'm grateful to have called him my faithful and loyal friend. Whenever I needed him to speak for anything, he was always there if his schedule would allow it. And so I am honored tonight just to say to Maya and to the family that we are continuing to pray for you. And to all of us who are still here on this side, that we will be able to honor Elijah if we take our lights and trim and burn them and let God use us on this side to be great men and women of God. To God be the glory for the great man Elijah was.
That's a good commencement speech, I'm just saying. Our next speaker before Maya is Norris Davis. Norris, please come forward. Norris is a longtime friend and confidant of Elijah's. He served for many years on the congressional staff. He also happened to play a character on The Wire. I imagine you could hold court with us for a long time telling stories Elijah may or may not want us to know. I also want to thank you for your friendship to Elijah, because you were someone he could trust to tell the good and bad and know it was safe. So from all of us, the strength you gave him as a friend, we want to say thank you.
Thank you. Good evening to Dr. Maya Rocketmore and the Cummings family. I thank you for giving me this brief opportunity. I want to share a story. Elijah and I met him when I was living a very different life. I had been incarcerated and I needed a job. He gave me a job. And not only did he give me a job, he transformed my life. He touched my life in a way that encouraged me to see the best in me when I saw the worst in me. He encouraged me to accent my writing ability. I started writing for The Wire. I didn't have any idea that I had that talent in me because I came up in the inner city. That's all I knew. But he knew something different, and he believed in me, and he encouraged me to believe in myself. And today, I'm a great man and a child of God. And I'm so sad. I've lost a friend, a dear friend. I can't give you all the accolades and the big words. All I can give you is my heart. He gave me that. So I thank all of you. I thank the Cummings family. I thank Dr. Rocketmore for giving me this opportunity, because I've lost a dear friend.
Thank you very much for being with us. So Maya's going to come to the stage. While she's coming, I just want to again thank Morgan State and all the staff. I also would like to give a shout out to my husband and son Ben, sitting over there very politely. I'd also like to give a shout out to the Weinberg Foundation staff for caring about Elijah and caring about this event. Earlier this summer, I will conclude with this, and I am an epic fail as your MC because we're ending so late. I just didn't feel comfortable having people feel they had to rush when they were saying such great things. When Elijah was in his office this summer, sitting below photographs of Nelson Mandela and Coretta Scott King, he said, "I don't know why I'm here. I don't know how long I'll be here, but I am here, and I'm going to make the best of it." And by George, did he ever. Thank you, Maya.
Didn't Rachel do a good job tonight? Let's thank Rachel. Let's thank Morgan State University and this wonderful choir behind us. Let's thank God for everyone who showed up today and for who showed Elijah their loves and paid their respects. We certainly appreciate you. On behalf of the family, those family members who are still here, please wave your hand in the front row. We would just like to say thank you for loving Elijah Eugene Cummings. Because guess what? He loved you. He loved his job. He loved representing the people of the 7th Congressional District. And he loved serving in the U.S. Congress, where he could fight on your behalf and fight for the values and the people that matter. He was definitely a champion of the underdog. Everything he did was to make sure that those who have been oppressed, depressed, stressed out, and marginalized got a better chance in life. And he made sure, till his dying day, that he was a supporter of people who needed an uplifting hand. People often ask me how I met Congressman Elijah Cummings. I got to Washington, D.C. in 1997 basically as an ABD, graduate student. I came to collect data from my dissertation. Elijah Cummings was one of the first members of Congress to grant me an interview. And the subject matter was HIV/AIDS. Now remember, this is 1997. There was a lot of stigma around HIV/AIDS. People, especially in the African American community at that time, we were talking about the changing face of AIDS, but we still had this notion of the stigma associated with homosexuality. The whole notion that, AIDS was quote unquote the gay disease, that, the people who captured it were perhaps somehow deserving of the disease that they got. And so it was my job, and I was exploring the African American political response to HIV/AIDS to understand how the Congressional Black Caucus was internalizing this disease and what they were doing about it. And I went into his office, and we had a long, extended conversation about what he was doing right here in Baltimore. In the midst of the stigma, in the midst of the misinformation and the disinformation around this disease, this was a man who was standing up and working with those with HIV/AIDS. He did not care about the stigma. He saw a population and a group that was hurting, a population and a group that was marginalized, and he was working and doing his best to make sure that they got the resources they needed in order to extend their lives and live a better life. And so with that, I labeled him a transformational leader in my dissertation. A transformational leader. Little did I know that later we would become great friends. I mean, literally. It was like we knew each other for a million years. The conversation just flowed effortlessly. And then, of course, over time, our friendship morphed into a great love that, that has been the honor of my life, to walk with this great man and to be with him as he did all of the tremendous things he did on behalf of the nation. So let me just tell you this. We often talk about Congressman Cummings and his love of Baltimore. But in this past week, I have heard from people from Egypt, from Japan, from Brazil, from France. I have heard from people from all over the world who have watched Elijah and watched his walk, his authentic walk, and empathized and understood and identified with him as a leader. And I just want to say on behalf of the family that we thank all of you for everything that you've done, but I know that he would want to say this. He would want to say, I thank you for allowing me to serve. And so before I leave the stage, I've just got to say this. This program came together in 4 days. Every speaker that you heard up here today basically said right away, yes, we will speak. And they came and they showed up en masse, and I just want to say thanks to all of them. I want to say thanks to Elijah's staff. Can you stand? The staff members. I don't know if you know, but it is unusual for members of Congress on either side, either the Senate or the Congress, to keep and retain staff for so many years. But Elijah kept and retained staff. They loved him and he loved them. And we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for giving everything that you have to the 7th Congressional District. And it's the same thing with his committee staff in Washington and also his other personal staff in Washington. They come to work on our behalf, and they loved to work with Congressman Elijah Cummings. And so with that, I also want to acknowledge and thank Shauna Watley. Shauna, can you stand? Tammy Jackson Buckner. Dina Curtis, stand. Rosalind Smith, stand. Michelle Speaks, I don't think she's here tonight. These are the ladies that helped me pull together the next 3 days of a celebration of Elijah's life. And I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done to help me out. So Morgan State University, March Funeral Home, New Psalmist Baptist Church, the Office of Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Kingdom Fellowship, all of these institutions have had an important part and role in playing in organizing this week's activities. But I've got to say this. Ron Daniels, can you stand? Johns Hopkins University, where we spent so much of the last 2.5 years of Elijah's life, I just want to say thank you to all of the professionals. Thank you. The nurses, the technicians, the excellent doctors, every single person over there showed nothing but kindness, respect, and service. They treated Congressman Cummings well. And I truly believe that his life would not have been extended as long as it has been without the professional assistance that he received from the professionals at Johns Hopkins University and at Johns Hopkins Hospital and the medical system. And so I just want to say thank you for that. And I want to end with this story about one of the last days of Elijah's life. I don't know if you remember last Tuesday, the day before Wednesday. Wednesday was a rainy day. Tuesday was a glorious day. I don't know if you remember that. The folks came in from the rehabilitation people came in and said, you know, we want to give you some sunshine therapy. We want to give you some sunshine therapy. But at this point, Elijah could not get out of bed. And so they wheeled his hospital bed up to the 14th floor of the hospital where the helicopters land. And they allowed us to go out on the roof of Johns Hopkins Hospital. And we wheeled Elijah out, and he looked upon the Inner Harbor. He looked upon South Baltimore, where he grew up. He looked at the downtown. He looked towards the west side, and it was so glorious. And he said, boy, I've come a long way. Man, has he come a long way. This was a great man, a man who has inspired so many, but he has been just as inspired by all of you who have poured so much into him. So with that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for loving Elijah. And thank you, most of all, for knowing that it's up to all of us to carry his legacy forward. Thank you so much.